The morning sun cast a warm, golden glow through the office windows, but inside, the atmosphere was anything but serene. Alex Parker, dressed in a simple hoodie and jeans, blended effortlessly with the bustling office employees, who were unaware of the storm that was about to hit them. He had come to his own company, under the guise of an ordinary worker, hoping to get a glimpse into the true heart of his business. But what he heard next stopped him cold. Laughter, whispers, snide comments about a man who had once been a bright-eyed intern, Alex himself, before he had become the company's successful yet enigmatic owner. His ears burned as the conversation turned from harmless chatter to something much darker. "Did you hear the rumors about Alex?" one voice said, chuckling. "They say he's hiding something, maybe even gay. Can you believe it? Doesn't fit the company image." A sharp sting twisted in Alex's gut. His own employees, people he had worked tirelessly for years to lead and support, were gossiping about his personal life. But what caught him even more off guard was the overwhelming feeling of betrayal that flooded him. He wasn't just angry, he was hurt. It was time to take control. Alex Parker had always been the quiet, observant type. Growing up in a small town, he'd learned early on to keep his thoughts to himself. The son of a working-class family, Alex knew what it was like to struggle. His father, a factory worker, often came home exhausted, his hands calloused and rough from years of labor. His mother, a high school teacher, was the steady force in the household, always encouraging Alex to dream bigger, to aim higher. It wasn't until college that Alex's potential began to unfold. An entrepreneur at heart, he created his first startup during his sophomore year, a small tech company that quickly grew into something far more significant than he'd ever expected. By the time he graduated, the company had caught the attention of investors, and his path toward becoming the youngest CEO of a rapidly expanding tech firm was set. Now, at 30, Alex stood as the CEO of Apex Technologies, a multimillion-dollar tech company specializing in cutting-edge software solutions. Despite his success, he had always kept a low profile, rarely making public appearances and only sharing glimpses of his life through the occasional company blog post. Most employees at Apex knew him only as the distant and highly successful businessman, a figure of authority whose decisions shaped the company from behind closed doors. But there was a side of Alex that few people knew about, one that had been buried beneath the layers of professionalism and business acumen. Alex was gay, and though he had never hidden it, he also hadn't made it a topic of conversation. In a competitive, male-dominated world like tech, Alex had always felt the need to prove himself. He wanted to be recognized for his intellect, not for his sexuality. At Apex, his closest confidant was Jamie, his right-hand woman, who had been with him since the company's earliest days. Jamie had seen the ups and downs of Alex's journey, and she admired him for more than just his business prowess. They'd shared late nights in the office, building the company from the ground up. Jamie was loyal, fierce, and protective, and she often acted as a buffer between Alex and the less savory elements of the business world. Despite the camaraderie with his team, Alex had always felt a certain distance. He kept a boundary between himself and the employees, preferring to remain somewhat aloof. His secret, his quiet, personal truth, was the one thing he feared could jeopardize the public image he'd spent so many years crafting. So, he buried it deep within, even though the weight of that secrecy was beginning to take its toll. Apex Technologies had grown rapidly over the years, but with growth came the pressure of managing a sprawling workforce. The larger the company became, the more disconnected Alex felt from its day-to-day operations. As the CEO, his decisions were made from behind a closed door, while the employees, those who made the company thrive, worked tirelessly in the trenches, unaware of the person who was shaping their futures. Alex had been struggling with the question of how to bridge that divide. He wanted to connect with his employees, but he wasn't sure how to reveal his true self without facing rejection or judgment. Deep down, he knew the company's culture needed to evolve, but it would take more than just good intentions. The stakes had never felt higher, especially now that a dangerous undercurrent of gossip had begun to rise. The morning had started like any other. Alex sat at his desk, reviewing reports, signing contracts, and answering emails. Yet, as the hours ticked by, something gnawed at him, a feeling he couldn't shake. The weight of the corporate world had settled more heavily on his shoulders these days, and he found himself increasingly frustrated by the distance he felt from the people who made Apex run. He knew the company was growing at an exponential rate, but his increasing isolation felt like a slow burn. He missed the early days when he could walk around the office, interact with the team, and feel a genuine connection to the work being done. The CEO position had given him power, but it had also created a barrier between him and the employees who once saw him as a mentor. As he walked into the break room for his daily coffee, the buzz of conversation immediately hit him. It wasn't the friendly chatter he had hoped for. Instead, it was a murmur of gossip, a sharp contrast to the usual hum of productivity. Alex stood frozen for a moment, coffee cup in hand, listening. "I heard Alex Parker is hiding something," one voice whispered, barely above a breath. "Maybe he's gay. I don't know, it just doesn't add up. I mean, look at him. He's so different from the other CEOs." Another voice snickered in agreement. "Yeah, he's not the typical alpha leader, is he? Doesn't have the usual image. Maybe that's why he keeps such a low profile." The words hit Alex like a physical blow. He had always been careful, almost too careful, to keep his personal life separate from his professional identity. He'd never allowed his sexuality to become part of the conversation, not because he was ashamed, but because he didn't want it to overshadow his accomplishments. In the world he worked in, he was determined to prove that his value came from his intellect, his work ethic, and his vision, not from the labels others might place on him. But here, in his own company, employees were discussing him behind his back, reducing his entire identity to mere speculation and rumor. The sharp sting of betrayal coursed through him, his face flushing as he clenched his jaw. He had heard whispers before, but this was different. It wasn't just the occasional passing comment. It was a collective judgment, one that seemed to question his worth as a leader, as a person. As he stood there, unnoticed, something inside him shifted. He could feel the anger rising, but it wasn't just anger at the gossip. It was anger at himself for allowing this culture to take root. He had spent so much time building his company, crafting his public image, that he'd forgotten to build something more important: trust. In that moment, the decision was made. He wasn't going to let this go. He wasn't going to hide anymore. The old Alex, the one who kept his distance, the one who was afraid to show who he truly was gone. He took a deep breath, steadied himself, and made a bold choice. Today, he would reveal himself, not just as the CEO of Apex Technologies, but as the person behind the business. And he would do it in a way that no one would forget. This wasn't just about exposing a secret. It was about confronting the very culture of silence and fear he had allowed to fester. The stakes were higher than he ever imagined, and Alex had just taken his first step into a confrontation that would change everything. Alex paced the narrow hallways of Apex Technologies, his mind racing. The decision he'd made to confront the gossip head-on hadn't come easily. He'd always kept his professional life separate from his personal one, a wall he'd built brick by brick over the years. But as the whispers grew louder, as the distance between him and his employees became more pronounced, Alex knew the time had come to tear down that wall. He had always prided himself on his intellect and his ability to solve problems, whether it was coding a new software solution or navigating a merger. But this was different. This wasn't a challenge that could be solved with data or strategic thinking. This was about people, about trust, and about breaking free from the chains of expectation and fear. Jamie, his most trusted advisor, noticed the change in him almost immediately. She had been with Alex from the very beginning, long before he had become the CEO of Apex. Their friendship had evolved into a strong professional partnership, and Jamie had always been his sounding board, the one person who understood the weight he carried. "Alex," she said one afternoon, catching him in the hallway, her voice soft but firm. "I can see you're struggling. You've been distant for days. Talk to me. What's going on?" Alex hesitated, his gaze shifting to the ground. He wanted to confide in her, but the words felt stuck in his throat. For the first time in years, he was unsure of himself. The company, the employees, everything he had built. He wasn't sure if it was all worth it. The thought of revealing his personal truth, of tearing down the facade that had protected him for so long, terrified him. "I overheard something today," Alex finally admitted, his voice raw with emotion. "Something I don't think I can ignore anymore. They're gossiping about me, about my sexuality, And I can't just keep pretending that it doesn't matter. Jamie's expression softened. Alex, you've worked harder than anyone to get where you are. You built a company from the ground up. No one can take that away from you. But I think you're right. You can't hide who you are anymore. Not from yourself, and not from them. Alex swallowed, trying to steady his breathing. But what if it ruins everything? What if the employees lose respect for me? What if the investors pull out? It's not just my personal life on the line here. It's everything I've worked for. Jamie placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch firm yet reassuring. Alex, you've built this company on integrity and trust. You've always valued honesty, right? It's time to extend that same honesty to yourself. You don't have to be afraid of being who you are. If anything, it'll make you a stronger leader. And the people who respect you will still respect you. The rest, well, they don't deserve a place here anyway. Her words struck a chord deep within him, but they didn't quell the anxiety gnawing at his insides. That night, as Alex lay in bed, he couldn't stop replaying the conversations he had overheard. The laughter, the judgment, the way they had reduced him to nothing more than a rumor. He had always prided himself on keeping a professional distance, but now he felt like a stranger in his own company. The next few days were a blur of uncertainty and tension. Alex knew he had to address the situation before it spiraled out of control, but every time he thought about confronting his employees, a wave of self-doubt would crash over him. What if they turned on him? What if they saw him as weak, as less capable of leading because of his sexuality? Still, the thought of retreating, of allowing the gossip to define him, was unbearable. He had spent too many years building something that was more than just a business. It was a testament to everything he believed in, to the values of perseverance, equality, and integrity. The company-wide meeting, Alex stood before the mirror in his office, his hands trembling slightly as he adjusted his tie. His reflection stared back at him, a man who had spent years carefully constructing a persona, a leader who today, he wasn't just going to speak to the employees about business. Today, he was going to speak to them as a person. When the meeting started, the usual bustle of voices and muted conversations faded away. The employees filed into the large conference room, settling into their seats, their eyes flicking to Alex with polite curiosity. The room was filled with the hum of anticipation, and Alex felt the weight of the moment press down on him. He cleared his throat, his voice steady, but the words he had prepared felt inadequate. He needed to do more than just address the rumors. He needed to show them who he truly was. "Thank you all for coming," Alex began, his gaze sweeping over the room. "I know there's been some chatter lately, and I want to address it head on. I'm not here to give you another corporate speech or some empty motivational talk. I'm here to be real with you, to show you the man behind the CEO, and to share something personal, something I should have shared a long time ago." A nervous ripple ran through the crowd. Alex took a deep breath, his heart pounding in his chest. "I'm gay," he said, the words hanging in the air, raw and unfiltered. "And I've kept it hidden for a long time because I was afraid of what it would mean for my career, for my company, afraid of the judgment and the whispers. But I've realized that living in fear doesn't make me a better leader. It makes me a liar." The room was silent. Alex could feel the weight of the moment, the uncertain stares of the employees as they processed his words. But there was no going back now. "I've built Apex Technologies with hard work, determination, and a belief in doing what's right. And I will continue to lead this company with those same values. But I'm asking you to do something too. I'm asking you to respect me, not just as the CEO, but as the person I am. I've always valued transparency, and today, I'm asking for the same from all of you." There was a pause, long enough to make Alex's heart race even faster. But then, Jamie stood up at the back of the room, her voice strong and unwavering. "I've known Alex for years, and I can tell you this. He's one of the most dedicated, compassionate, and loyal people I know. This company is what it is today because of him, and we should be proud of him for being brave enough to share his truth." The employees exchanged glances, some nodding, others still uncertain. But Alex felt a small sense of relief wash over him. The tension in the room had shifted, and though the journey ahead wouldn't be easy, he knew he had taken the first step toward a new chapter, one where he could truly be himself. The road wasn't without its setbacks. Over the next few weeks, there were moments of discomfort. Employees who avoided him in the halls, awkward conversations and meetings. But there were also moments of connection. Small gestures of support from those who had quietly admired him for years. The weight of the rumors gradually began to lift, replaced by a new sense of respect for the man who had chosen to live authentically, even in the face of uncertainty. But Alex knew this was just the beginning. He hadn't just confronted the gossip. He had confronted his own fear. And though the path ahead was still filled with challenges, he had taken the first step toward truly becoming the leader and the person he had always wanted to be. A week had passed since Alex's revelation, and though the initial shock had worn off, the whispers hadn't disappeared. In fact, they had grown more insidious. Employees who had once smiled and greeted him in the halls now avoided his gaze, muttering to each other when he passed. The tension was palpable, suffocating the atmosphere at Apex Technologies. Alex could feel the shift. The once vibrant energy of the office now felt strained, heavy. He had hoped for understanding, for respect, but what he received was discomfort and awkward distance. It was a Friday morning when the storm finally hit. Alex was sitting in his office, staring at the latest sales report, when Jamie knocked and entered without waiting for a response. Her face was pale, and her eyes were filled with worry. "Alex, we need to talk," she said, her voice low. He stood up, his pulse quickening. "What's going on?" "It's the investors," Jamie said, pacing nervously. "Some of them are, well, they're concerned. They've been hearing rumors about you, about your personal life. And it's affecting the company's valuation. They want answers, Alex. They want you to address it. Now." The words hit him like a punch to the gut. He had known the risks when he'd come out to his employees. But this was something he hadn't anticipated. His sexuality threatening the company he had built. It felt like a betrayal. The very thing he had fought so hard to protect now crumbling beneath him. "What do they want me to say?" Alex asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The pressure was crushing him, and it took everything in him not to crumble under the weight of it all. "They want you to make a statement, Alex," Jamie replied. "They want you to distance yourself from the rumors. Deny them. Say it was just a misunderstanding, that you're not what they think you are. They're afraid it'll tarnish the company's reputation if you don't." The words were like nails on a chalkboard. It felt as if every part of him, every ounce of integrity, every part of the man he had become, was being put to the test. For a long moment, he didn't speak. The room felt suffocating, the walls closing in as the weight of the choice loomed over him. He could lie. He could deny everything, save the company's image, and protect himself from further scrutiny. He could bow to the pressure, just like so many others in the corporate world had done before him. He could retreat back into the shadows, keeping his personal life a secret and letting the rumors die out. But then, he thought of the conversations that had taken place in the break room, the voices that had turned his life into a whisper. He thought of the employees who had looked up to him, who had admired his work ethic, his values, his leadership. And he thought of the future, the kind of company he wanted to build, the culture he wanted to foster. He didn't want to live in fear anymore, and he didn't want his company to either. His jaw tightened as he looked at Jamie. "I'm not going to lie, Jamie. I'm not going to pretend to be something I'm not. If they want me to deny who I am, then maybe they're not the investors I want in this company." The silence between them stretched for what felt like an eternity. Jamie's eyes searched his face, looking for any trace of doubt. But there was none. "Are you sure?" she asked softly. Alex nodded, his decision final. "I've spent too many years hiding. If this company is going to thrive, it has to be on my terms. It has to be a place where everyone can be themselves. I won't build it on lies. Not anymore." With a deep breath, he gathered his strength. "Call the investors. Tell them I'm ready to meet with them. I'll address this head on." Jamie hesitated, clearly worried about the repercussions, but then nodded in agreement. "Okay, I'll set it up." The meeting with the investors was scheduled for the following Monday. As the weekend passed, Alex's anxiety grew, but his resolve never wavered. He knew this would be the hardest thing he had ever done. The stakes were high, and the pressure was overwhelming, but deep down, he knew it was the only way forward. On Monday, as the investors filed into the sleek conference room, Alex stood at the head of the table, his heart pounding in his chest. He had done his research, gathered all the information to support the company's financial growth, and he was ready to talk about the future. But today, there was something more important he needed to address. "Thank you all for coming," Alex began, his voice calm but firm. "I know there have been some concerns circulating about my personal life, and I want to address them head on. I know you may have heard rumors, and I understand that they may be unsettling. But I want to be clear about one thing. What you're hearing doesn't define me, and it doesn't define Apex Technologies." He paused, looking each investor in the eye. "I'm gay. That's a part of who I am. But it doesn't change the work we've done here, the progress we've made, or the vision we have for the future. If that's something you can't accept, then maybe we're not the right fit for each other. But if you believe in what we're building, if you believe in the integrity of this company, then I ask for your trust and support as we move forward." For a long, agonizing moment, the room was silent. Alex's words hung in the air, a challenge, a declaration, a test of everything he had worked for. He could feel the tension rising, the eyes of the investors shifting between one another. The future of his company, his reputation, everything he had fought for was now in the balance. Then, slowly, one of the investors, the one who had been the most vocal in his concerns, spoke up. "Alex," he said, his voice low but steady, "I have to admit, this is unexpected. But after seeing the results this company has produced, I'm not going to make my decision based on rumors. We're here because we believe in this company, and we believe in you. So, yes, we're with you. We'll continue to support Apex." A wave of relief washed over Alex, but the battle was far from over. He knew that there would still be challenges, still be moments of doubt. But in that moment, he had passed the most important test of all. He had stayed true to himself, and he had demanded the same from those around him. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in years, Alex felt a sense of freedom. He had faced his greatest challenge and emerged victorious. The days following the investors' meeting were a whirlwind of activity, but the weight Alex had been carrying for years had finally begun to lift. The moment he had feared, the confrontation with the truth, had turned into an unexpected turning point, both for him personally and for Apex Technologies. Word of his brave stand spread quickly throughout the company. At first, there was a lingering uncertainty. Employees who had avoided him before now hesitated to approach him, unsure of what to say or how to react. But gradually, the atmosphere in the office began to change. The whispers died down. People started to see Alex not just as a CEO, but as a human being, a man who had the courage to face adversity and stand tall in the face of judgment. Alex's transformation was subtle but profound. No longer the distant, guarded figure he had once been. He became more approachable, more present. He took time to connect with his employees on a personal level, asking about their families, their ambitions, their struggles. He made it a point to be in the trenches with them, attending team meetings, brainstorming sessions, and even hosting informal lunches where the conversation wasn't about business but about life, about being human. Jamie, as always, stood by his side. "You know," she said one afternoon, as they reviewed a new partnership proposal, "you've changed. You're more real. I think the company feels it too." Alex smiled, leaning back in his chair. "Maybe it's because I've finally allowed myself to be real. For so long, I was afraid of showing my true self. But now it feels like I can breathe." Jamie raised an eyebrow. "And breathe you do. I've never seen you more engaged. You're inspiring people, Alex. They're not just following you because you're the CEO. They're following you because you've shown them what real leadership looks like." It was true. The company's culture was shifting. There was a renewed sense of camaraderie, a shared understanding that honesty and authenticity weren't just buzzwords. They were the foundation on which Apex Technologies would thrive. The employees no longer saw Alex as the figurehead in the corner office, but as the leader who had laid everything bare for them. His vulnerability had made him more relatable, and in turn, it had brought out the best in his team. But it wasn't just within the walls of Apex that Alex's transformation was taking place. Word of his actions had spread beyond the company, to the business world at large. There were those who had doubted him, investors, competitors, even colleagues from the early days of his career, who now looked at him with a new kind of respect. They admired his courage to stand firm in his identity, to challenge the conventional norms of leadership. It wasn't just about being a good CEO anymore. It was about being a good person. And Alex had proven, time and again, that he was both. One particularly significant moment came during a major tech conference where Alex had been invited to speak on leadership in the digital age. As he stood on the stage, looking out at the sea of faces, he felt a sense of calm wash over him. This was it, the moment when he would share his story with the world, to show that strength came not from pretending to be invincible, but from embracing your truth. "Good afternoon, everyone," Alex began, his voice steady, yet filled with a quiet passion. "I want to talk to you today about leadership. Not the kind you read about in books or hear about in boardrooms, but the kind that happens when you show up as your true self, when you stop hiding behind the masks you've built to survive." The crowd fell silent, hanging on his every word. "I spent many years trying to lead from a place of perfection," Alex continued. "I was so focused on being the right kind of leader that I forgot to be the kind of leader who could connect with people. I was afraid that if I revealed who I really was, I'd lose everything I had worked for. But what I learned, what I want you to take away from this, is that the things we fear the most, the things we think will break us, are often the very things that make us stronger." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle in. "For me, that fear was being open about my sexuality. For you, it might be something else, your past, your flaws, your mistakes. But hiding those parts of ourselves doesn't make us better leaders. It makes us less human. And it's our humanity, our ability to empathize, to connect, that makes us powerful." The room erupted in applause. For the first time in his life, Alex felt fully seen, not as the CEO of Apex Technologies, but as a man who had fought his demons and emerged stronger for it. He had stopped pretending, stopped running from his fears, and it had opened doors he hadn't even realized were closed. In the months that followed, the company saw unprecedented growth. Apex Technologies secured new partnerships, expanded its global reach, and its workforce became more diverse and inclusive. The impact of Alex's decision rippled throughout the company, creating a culture of openness and collaboration that would carry it forward into a bright future. But the greatest payoff came not from the financial success or industry accolades. It came from the way Alex had transformed as a person. He had stepped into his full power, embracing his truth, and in doing so, he had empowered everyone around him to do the same. One afternoon, as Alex sat in his office overlooking the city, he felt a deep sense of peace. It wasn't the kind of peace that came from a job well done or a balance sheet in the green. It was the peace that came from knowing that he was finally living authentically, without fear, without hesitation. And that peace, he realized, was the true measure of success. It had been a long journey, but the man who had once been afraid to show who he truly was had become the leader he had always hoped to be. One who led with heart, who inspired others to live boldly and authentically, and who, in turn, had created a company that would stand the test of time. As he looked out of the skyline, Alex smiled. He knew the road ahead would still have its challenges, but he also knew that whatever came next, he was ready. And for the first time in his life, he was confident that he didn't need to hide anymore. He had already won the most important battle of all, the battle to be himself. The moral was clear. True leadership isn't about perfection or the image you project. It's about embracing who you are, flaws and all, and inspiring others to do the same. Only then can you build something that lasts. Years later, Alex stood on the rooftop of Apex Technologies headquarters, looking out over the city that had watched him grow. The skyline had changed, with new buildings and innovations emerging, just as the company had. Apex was thriving, not just in revenue, but in the culture it had fostered. It had become a beacon for inclusivity, creativity, and integrity, attracting top talent from around the world. Alex had become a mentor, not only to his employees, but to a generation of young entrepreneurs who looked up to him as an example of what it meant to lead with authenticity. His story was shared at conferences, in boardrooms, and in classrooms, serving as a powerful reminder that true leadership isn't about the power you hold. It's about the way you make others feel seen and valued. His relationship with Jamie had deepened, and they had become more than just colleagues. They were friends, allies in the shared mission of creating a company that valued people over profits. Together, they continued to lead Apex with a vision of growth that didn't compromise its values. As he reflected on his journey, Alex felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. He had faced the darkest parts of himself and come out stronger, and in doing so, He had created something that would endure far beyond his own time at the helm. The future was bright. There would still be challenges, no doubt. But Alex had learned that true strength came from vulnerability, and with that knowledge, he was ready for whatever came next. The story of Apex Technologies was far from over, but the foundation of trust, authenticity, and courage that Alex had laid would carry it forward into a legacy of impact and inspiration. And that, he knew, was just the beginning.